Bad Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and today's episode is brought to you by our featured patron, Ryan Amsler. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Tony's got the bad idea for us this week. Tony, what are we talking about?
Today, we're going to be talking about China's social credit score and the system that they're hoping to implement by 2020.
And already are implementing somewhat,
This is something that's been in pilot tests for a few years now. Like, there are a lot of cities that have fully converted to it, and it's not fully out yet, but the ramifications of this are terrifying, and it is an incredibly bad idea, so we're going to dive into it here.
Dunking on China again, coming back around from the absolute thrashing we gave them for the Great Leap Forward.
Yeah, it's like they just keep on doing this because they still have a communist government, or a pseudo-communist government.
Yeah, hopefully this one won't kill tens of millions of people. It might just be like an authoritarian, horrifying overreach.
Yeah, but it also gives the infrastructure to do those sorts of things. We're going to get into that here.
Okay.
We all know how huge social media has become. You can hardly go online without seeing who made a major gaffe on Twitter, what world leader is dropping inane jokes, and what your grandma can't seem to post without all capital letters. While we have seen that the world can turn on a person in an instant, even some random non-celebrity, that doesn't hold a candle to what is happening in China with their social credit system. As it is rolled out, we are watching China score everything you do. Did you litter? Well, that's a few points against you. Did you help an elder person get their groceries home? That's a few points for you. If it's caught on camera, that is. Imagine how the Good Places scorekeeping works, but if you drop too low, you can no longer use trains or other mass transit, get loans, keep jobs, or access many other services, or even hang around people with a higher credit score.
Wow. Like, not even hanging out with them.
Yeah, like some of these apps actually have a built-in radar system to show you where these people are, so you don't have to be within proximity of them. Imagine that this system is also ran by one of the most clearly tyrannical governments on the planet. The one that might be gearing up to smash enormous protests in Hong Kong right now like they did in Tiananmen Square in the past. It's the same government that is now facing accusations of harvesting organs of political dissenters to disseminate them amongst their population. That is the administration that's running this.
Now listen, we have to point out that this might just be pro-Western propaganda, Tony. That's what all of the Chinese bots in Reddit tell me every time someone brings up something that's against China.
Yeah, it's like those concentration camps that they have like up in the northwestern part of their country. That's totally just Western propaganda.
Yep, there's definitely no video of that happening.
The program started in 2014 and is slowly being rolled out. In some places it's voluntary at the moment, but in the next few years it will be mandatory for all citizens and their score will stick with them for life. It generally goes until you're 80 and then they just stop caring about you after you're 80.
So all the 81-year-old anarchists can get their freak on.
Yeah, like one of the only people I saw that was actually in China that was offering a dissenting opinion to this was like an 84-year-old man who used to be like a mayor of a city. So you could tell that he just didn't care anymore. It's like, what are they going to do to him? He's already 84 and like infirm. Also, like, these systems are being piloted by some major companies you might have heard of, like Alibaba, the manufacturing company, designed one of these apps. That's the Sesame one, where people are trying this out. Like, you can actually go and use the Sesame app and get, like, a printout of all your things. And it also makes your debts and everything very public, so everybody gets to know every detail about you with that sort of stuff. It's just a bizarre, bizarre system.
The fact that it's so heavily integrated with the private, quote-unquote, sector is surprising to me. I've actually shopped on Alibaba before. I bought some cheap Chinese junk for my kids, and I just thought of it, and it's been described to me as like, oh, this is the Chinese Amazon or eBay, or like, this is, you know.
Yeah, or if you need like 1,000 things manufactured and you're in the West, you can do that without having to like make a bunch of calls to mainland China.
Right. So the fact that they're on board with this, like, oh, maybe you'll get a discount on Alibaba if you're acting nicely. And that's, like, if you're going to do this thing, I'm sort of, I guess, getting ahead of where you're going. But, like, if you incentivize good behavior, that seems fine. But don't, like, deny people a home loan because they didn't help enough people cross the street.
Yeah, and one of the things that they keep mentioning in their propaganda videos, which I actually found a few, like this one from CGTN, where underneath the video it says, "This video is funded in whole or in part by the Chinese government." And, like, they actually use some things. They're like, "This is like America's FICO scores, except it extends to everything in life, and you'll be much better off because of it."
I mean, the cities might be cleaner, the trains might run on time, and that's really all anybody cares about, right?
Yeah, fascists are really good at getting the trains to run on time. It's always, like, a weird thing that I hear about, like, the black-booted guys in Italy and all these other things that, like, yeah, like, it's a system of government that works on efficiency. Only problem is you've only got a few people deciding what's efficient. The system that most people are talking about is pretty simple. Everyone starts with 1,000 points, and you can go up to 1,050 at your max, or down as far as you want to go. To be an exemplary citizen, you have to stay over 1,000 points. There are signs posted all over showing what the transgressions are and what can get you points. They also have lots of propaganda posters all over the city that say things like integrity and honesty, and they have, like, just all these random concepts about what they want their city to be. And in some ways, I can see why this would be a good system for trying to keep people honest and trying to make benefits for things and make your cities cleaner. They actually did this in a city that was covered in feces, pretty much. Like, it was just a very, very ugly city, and they piloted and enforced it, and now the city's very, very clean. So it's working, but it's also completely eliminating privacy and freedom.
Well, you can tell where the carrot and stick sort of ratio is by the fact that you can only get up to 1,050, but you have to stay above 1,000 to be considered good enough. Like, you can go down to 0 and then have to climb out of that hole. It's not like you can build up 3,000 points and then, kick some kids in the shin just because you feel like it and you've got those 3,000 points.
Yeah, it's a very limiting system. You can only go so far, especially whenever you've got, like, a traffic ticket being worth 5 points, or if you do a heroic act that saves people's lives being worth 30. It's like, it feels like you can top out pretty quick and you can just lose points very, very fast. Currently, the system is being enforced by systems of cameras with facial recognition software and car plate recognition, things like that. But there are also paid enforcers who wander the city streets looking for infractions and praiseworthy actions. What was really weird is I watched maybe like 15 videos on this while I was also reading articles, and it was always the same two people. Like, it was always this administrator in one city and the lady that was walking around with her black book looking for good things or bad things to, like, rat people out. And it was always the same people. Like, it's like, this is, whenever you go to China to talk about the social credit system, you only get sent to these people.
I'm sure that's fine, Tony. That's probably not like a massive sort of government misinformation campaign happening.
Not at all.
You mentioned cameras watching you while you drive. It reminds me of an episode of the Grand Tour I saw on Amazon where they went to China. This is the guys who used to be Top Gear in the UK. Same basic show. But they went to China to drive around their highways, and they mentioned that those cameras are watching you, and you just get a ticket if you're not even wearing a seatbelt.
They are very advanced systems that are all connected to a single grid. What you're talking about is the fact that they have 200 million cameras on a single camera grid that are going in to find these sorts of infractions, identify people, and even, like, the lesser smart cameras are able to use, like, the software because it's sort of a cloud computing type thing.
Well, and the hilarious part about this story is I've heard they are now doing pretty brisk business on t-shirts that look like they have a seatbelt going across them.
That's actually pretty industrious. I like that. I'm not encouraging you to not wear your seatbelt, but I do like the idea.
I very much believe in seatbelts. Seatbelts are not a bad idea. Totalitarianism? Yeah, it is.
At the end of the day, a city-sponsored news network shows the highlights. It captures people running stop signs, littering, crimes, and more. It's a very strange shame network built up to make people good subjects of the state. Also, some of the things that are on the list that will get you to lose points: buying too many video games, smoking in non-designated areas, and the rules just keep on adding up. Like, they keep on adding more rules and stipulations that can cost you points.
I mean, they've reinvented reputation, right?
Yeah. It's like video game level rep systems.
You have lost karma. I'm playing I'm playing Fallout New Vegas, and every time I eat somebody. They have that little annoying thing. It's like, you've lost karma for being a cannibal. Like, let me eat people.
It's just a waste otherwise. Getting back to the information collectors, these are essentially state-approved snitches walking around with their black booklets. During an interview, she detailed some of the things that she had written down. She gave points to a man carrying a drunk person home, although I couldn't find if she actually took points away for the man for being drunk in public. That seems like one of the things that could be like a negative points.
Well,
she
considering
took away points
it's opt-in at this point, maybe if you're the kind of person who's drunk in public frequently, you don't sign up for the system.
Well, for this city, it's not opt-in; it's mandatory.
Okay, fair enough.
She took away points whenever she overheard a farmer cursing while he was working because his tools weren't working very well. Like, just random stuff like that. And for her, it's a part-time position where she makes about $50 a month to just snitch on her friends. I'm thinking that eventually with systems like this, it's going to be sort of a voluntary thing, maybe a bounty thing, if you can actually find stuff to work on. Like, people are talking about the different ways that you're going to pilot this system to get the things that the cameras don't get. And I just wonder if it's going to get to the point where they start putting cameras inside of each household just to make sure, like put a microphone in there to make sure people aren't cursing and they can take points and just get that level of control. At the moment, it's mostly things done in public.
It's almost like there's something wrong with this idea. That was my reaction to all of the stuff you just said.
It's almost. According to an NBC News source, the system has already blocked people from booking over 23 million flights, millions of high-speed train trips. It also extends to more than just transportation, but that seems to be the clearest example of privileges that are being revoked for Chinese citizens as this system rolls out. And that seems like it could be something small, but if you're actually like a sort of dissident and you're not allowed to leave the country, if you're all of a sudden getting your passport revoked for tweets that you made, or in a very real case of a journalist who was docked points for being critical of the local government and then was docked more points whenever he posted an apology because they said the apology wasn't sincere enough, like this becomes a major issue where all of a sudden you're kind of getting locked out of various aspects of society, and this is just the beginning of that.
I assume it keeps going?
Yeah. At the moment, the places that are using this system won't hire discredited people. They can't get bank loans, a hotel room, to work in public positions like schools, and like I said, there's so many positions where, like, a simple tweet or something like that, they actually use something that's not quite Twitter, mostly over there. It's another state-approved service. But any sort of, like, criticism, any sort of anything like this can get you fully onto that discredited list. And there are only so many times that you can actually get points back up. In some of these, you can work 8 hours of community service to get 2 points back. But if you get, like, you've got to do a mandatory 10 points for your family, then you've got to do, like, the 5 you got for a parking ticket, then you've got to do the 15 you got for jaywalking. All of a sudden, that's a lot of hours of just, like, going and cleaning up a city just to get approval, like, to use a bike. It's bizarre. And the public shaming actually gets worse. We talked a little bit about the radar apps that showed up, but like if you were to click on this thing and see a discredited person, all of a sudden you have access to basically their whole list of sins, the debt they owe, and the things that they've done in the past. And if you end up hanging out with these people, even if they're a family member, your score will be brought down.
I want to like comment, but it's so gross. Like I just want to keep saying no. Stop. Don't do it.
Well, how about this? Like, one of the only ways that you can also raise your score easily is you can buy points back. Like, there are offices where you just see lines of people outside with cash in hand where you go and put the money in a donation box, they write your name down, and eventually you get some points back.
You know, like, I've just realized what this is. With the buyback thing, I just understood it. They've invented Catholicism.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is entirely like the old Catholic system of being able to, like...
You buy
I'm trying to remember, what was the name of it? Yeah,
sins.
indulgences. That was the exact word I was looking for, the indulgences. Like, they straight up took that out of the Catholic playbook.
And you shame people for the things they're doing wrong, and it's basically the same thing, because the Catholic Church essentially was synonymous with the state, close enough anyway, for our purposes in this conversation, back in the day, and... you did what they wanted, or in the olden days, you didn't get into heaven. Now you just don't get to go anywhere.
I was watching, like, the propaganda video that they put out. Like, it's this very young, like, happy, youthful girl, like, going and being like, look, I can use this state-sponsored car because my credit is so high. I get to use this bike without paying a huge deposit. I can actually shop at this grocery store because I have good social credit. This is how we will keep ourselves safe and protected. And it's like, it's so obvious. Like, I don't know if the people that make propaganda videos in China don't understand how skeptical we are of everything.
I don't know if they care about us.
Yeah, it's true, but it's like, why would they be making, like, English videos to be put on YouTube in, like, to get this out there?
I mean, I guess that's fair. I think they're going to make a basic attempt. Do you understand how pervasive some of these things can get in a totalitarian regime, though? I mean, even someplace like North Korea, where they might understand we have it pretty bad, but the government tells them so frequently and so often that people are lying about how good it is in other places that even if they suspect it might be a little better in the United States, it's still just some kind of unbelievable shock to them when they actually, you know, the few of them that are able to get out get to see how different it actually is.
Yeah, but there's still a sense that things are very, very wrong. Like, one of the things I saw in a Vice piece where they found that North Korea was essentially selling off slave labor to Russia for, like, logging camps. And they went in there and talked to some of these people working as loggers, and they asked if they knew how bad the situation was because they were very, very isolated. And you could tell they were guarded about what they said. And they were saying, like, whatever we can do to bring just a little bit more money into our country to help other people is what we have to do. And it's, like, the implication is they know that it's awful.
But, I mean, again, I don't know that they don't believe that. Right, like you can convince people, hey, you actually are making a difference for your country, and maybe at some part of their brain they're able to rationalize the idea that they're actually doing something good, and so it's okay that I'm enslaved, even if it does suck for me.
It's a very strange situation. From the books I've read about people that escaped North Korea, like, they all know that something is very, very wrong, especially because you have those weekly meetings where you're essentially trying to snitch on everybody else. It's a much more analog version of this type of system.
It's like Twitter, but, you know, state-sponsored. Let's go find the blackface photo or the bad thing that the person said, drag it out. But, like, you think cancel culture is bad on Twitter? Wait until the government gets behind it.
I just wonder what's going to happen, like, with people whenever they hit a certain threshold of points. It's like, if you get under 200 points, do they just come put you in jail? Like, there's got to be some severe repercussions for people that drop really far in this.
I'm sure it will evolve.
Most of the people that I saw in interviews, like Vice, NBC, and various other, they talked to the youth in China. They didn't seem to care about their privacy near as much, and I think that's just because of the values that have been imparted on there. But I also wonder if you're talking to, like, a model citizen, somebody that the state has set up for you to interview about this, if it's partially propaganda or if it's partially because they're absolutely terrified to start off on the wrong foot with this. Like, if you're in Beijing and you have a good credit score and someone's coming to talk to you about it, first off, you're already reaping the rewards of this system. Second off, like, are you terrified that if the Chinese state saw this, that all of a sudden you would lose all that status? It doesn't seem like you have the freedom to talk about it or be critical in any sort of way. So asking people about this system and what they think, which China claims they've got over an 80% approval rating for this system, it just seems a little too convenient to me for people to, like, be dissenters once you institute a system that is so minutely capable of ruining your life.
You have to understand these people have grown up in essentially a totalitarian state anyway. Like, they're allowed some amount of freedom, but the government gets to do whatever it wants. It allows them the freedom that they basically just enough freedom so that the country doesn't collapse. And it's kind of like what they just did, where, like, you have freedom and you get to elect presidents, but now all of a sudden the president is in his position for life. Oh, okay. And what are you going to do about it? Nothing, because it's not like you're going to appeal that to the Supreme Court. There's no opposing party that's allowed. So there's that. There's also the fact that you mentioned that they're not concerned about losing their privacy, but I think that's sort of a cultural... I see a lot of that around even young people today. Nobody really cares about their privacy. They talk about it, But nobody's actually going to stop using Facebook because they might be collecting their data. Nobody's going to actually opt out of the supermarket bonus program that tells them everything that you buy. Those things seem like they've just sort of gone away, and the benefits, at least to the people who have grown up with it, outweigh the costs.
And I think you're right with that. I think a lot of it is that times have changed to allow this, and maybe I'm just a curmudgeon that doesn't believe the sentiment, if you don't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about, in a state known for massive human rights abuses.
Oh, I'm not trying to justify the system. I'm just saying the idea that people care a lot about privacy is probably overblown. Maybe it shouldn't be, but I think it probably is.
Yeah, and it's not like the U.S. doesn't have some of these tools being used against its own citizens with the NSA recording everything. It's just that it's not tied to a social credit network where if you do something bad, you lose all of your privileges, so long as you're not doing something illegal.
Because we could vote against that. Now, again, you could argue, well, why don't we vote against the NSA? Like, they're not hurting enough people? I don't want to get into a deep political discussion. Obviously, not everything is perfect anywhere. All right, so whataboutism, that's valid as far as it goes. But we still have a reasonable amount of freedom to vote for things to change if they're getting really sucky.
Yeah, and we actually could demonstrate and do all that. Although China is having its huge demonstrations right now, it's going to be interesting to see if they actually get anything done with that. To me, this sounds like the tools of tyranny are sharpening in this formerly isolationist kingdom. Some of the verbiage used in official documents is downright dystopian. One release said that they are trying to purify society. Their president, some Winnie the Pooh-looking loser named Xi Jinping, says that the system helps keep people safer and make their lives easier. I believe that entrusting this sort of power to the state is one of the worst ideas we've ever spoken about on this show. It's not about the administration you hand power to, it's about the power you hand in perpetuity to the government. This regime has already proven to be willing to send its Islamic minority in the Northwest to concentration camps. It has killed its dissenters. It continues to loosely occupy Taiwan. It consistently tortures its own people. This program is giving near godlike omniscience to murderous tyrants under the guise of better citizenry. And I think that, like I said, this could be one of the worst ideas we've talked about. And maybe it's just because I have an extreme bias against communism. I'm against government having expanded powers. But this is a brutally terrifying system that is going to get worse as it goes. This is literally an episode of Black Mirror. And I'm sure that Black Mirror probably based it off of this. But it's like watching a future dystopia happen slowly. And it's very unsettling to me.
It's concerning. There's a lot of stuff happening in China that's concerning. It's so tough to know how far it's going to go or if it could backfire enough to eat itself. You certainly hope, at the very least, that the places that are relatively free compared to China will be able to resist the kind of problems that this could cause.
It's also a problem in that China is already looking to export this technology to other countries. So it's like they're even going to be making money off of it for countries that want to do this in their own space.
And I want to point out the idea of encouraging good behavior. I mean, I can speak to this as a parent at least. That seems fine. If you give people a little bonus for doing stuff that you like, it doesn't appear to me to be as nefarious, but it's the constant intrusions into people's every aspect of their lives, and the fact that they're using the negative approach just for things like swearing or not picking up litter. Again, picking up litter is good. I don't swear. None of these things are ideals that I'm against, but this is not how you do it. In my opinion, Tony.
This is completely stripping people of their own power. And I think that they're going to see that a lot of people, once they drop under this 1,000-point threshold and can never get past it, are going to become very, very disgruntled citizens that might start becoming actual dissenters because they've lost their ability to be free.
Yeah, what happens to the people who can't access society? You end up with the whole shadow under society? I don't know. I'm going to bring up I'm sure people are making the obvious comparison to 1984. This honestly reminds me of a book that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but I've read it a while back and I'm rereading it right now. It's called Accelerando by Charles Stross. And
I have that book on my shelf and I haven't read it yet. I want to.
I think I've way back in the day I mentioned this to you and you had it and you still haven't read it. But they have in
I've got
that
like
the
400 books I
idea
haven't read.
of reputation markets, similar to stock markets, and they function in a way, and this is actually in the book described as being something that is in America, or at least in the sort of more Western world, where people who are doing good deeds are essentially alerted to that, and people know that they help other people out, and the guy who's the hero of the first part of the book is someone who just gives away ideas for inventions, and in exchange people around him are very, very nice to him. And that's sort of the positive spin of this kind of idea, but it's even there, it's still put in this idea of it's a very public streaming, people are always listening, everybody's streaming their lives intentionally anyway. There's a lot of problems that could happen with it, I guess, as we've already discussed ad nauseum.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the unintended consequences will be, and I'm wondering what other countries are going to be adopting this within the next 10, 20 years.
If the worst outcome is that it works, because then somebody else says, well, why don't we try that?
Yeah, compliance through tyranny. It's gonna be strange watching this grow.
Stay tuned.
But that is our bad idea for the week. Thank you guys for listening. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoy this and want more content from us, we have the bonus podcast only accessible to our patrons. You also get access to lots of videos and things early. You get pins, you get shirts, you get all sorts of cool stuff. So check out patreon.com/humanechoes. Also, if you want to add to this conversation, you can hit us up on Twitter @humanechoes, or you can send us an email at badideasshow@gmail.com to drop suggestions, comments, anything like that. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you very soon.
Bye, guys.